Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one. One where we dive into tons of interesting topics, and another where we just dive into tons of family-friendly books and stories. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, let's learn all about August top 20 moments. Yes, August. And I tell you what, I have to be honest up front. When I'm thinking of August, I'm thinking of dog days, of summer, right? But I really couldn't come up with any. And I'm ashamed to admit it. So I did my research and I said, oh yeah, okay, I remember this. Well, I didn't know this. And I'll say this up front. This is one man's opinion. I am with all my other episodes. You can go back to everyone going back to January, right? We still have a few more months left. But for this list, I'm ranking them from 20 to 1 in terms of the most impactful moments in history. And this is just my opinion, and you can have fun with this because as I'm going through and trying to make the list, there's no way I'm right, and it's ridiculous. It's insanity to actually make this list. And you'll see why, as I'm beginning some of this, how is this one moment more famous than another? Well, again, certain generations, certainly my age, you may be favoring certain time periods over another. And again, when we get to the top 5, as I've talked about, because moments are indelible in our memory, moments can be good, they can be bad. So there's no way I am going to rank one over the other. And especially with August, you'll see why when we get up to the top 3 and that top 5, there's no way that you're going to celebrate it by saying it's number 1, number 2, number 3. But anyway, let's go. Okay, let's learn. I'm going to give you 3 honorable mentions. The Berlin Wall begins. The building of the Berlin Wall begins on August 13th, 1961. On August 14th, 1935, the Social Security Act was put into place. August 26th, 1920, the 19th Amendment that gave women the right to vote was ratified and passed. And how about this honorable mention? You talk about important. August 2nd, 1776. Yeah, I bet you can guess. It wasn't July 4th. That was when they adopted the Declaration of Independence. But when they actually sat down and signed all their names, that happened on August 2nd. Not every single one, but most of the delegates signed that particular day. So that's interesting. And here's the insanity. Because number 20, like I'm going to say that this day is more important than actually signing the Declaration of Independence. Number 20 is MTV was started. All right. August 1st, 1981. I was in college. I remember it distinctly. It's 12:01 a.m. and this brand new cable television channel. It's still out there today, but it's a shell, a crumbling shell of its former self, right? Well, the opening images were this Apollo moon landing, and instead of American flag, viewers saw an MTV flag planted on the moon. The first music video that MTV played, it couldn't be a better video. Yeah, it was called Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles. And yeah, MTV, why was it so important? Because it transformed the music business by turning videos into a reality where it was almost more important or just as important as the song itself. Number 19. Again, I remember this as well. August 12th, 1981. Same year, just a few days later, the IBM personal computer was introduced. Apple had the first little PC right, that became popular, but now big bad IBM came in. I'm partial to this because I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York. That's where IBM made all their mainframes. IBM was so much a part of our town. And there was even a country club, IBM Country Club, that a lot of my friends belonged to. But when I started working for Prudential Insurance, yeah, we had those computers, and talk about it was like this big piece of luggage that we would pick up. The battery was on the back. And for many years, I kept it in my attic. I still should have kept it around. I eventually got rid of it, but no question, it's a dinosaur, but it was a big moment at the time. Number 18, on August 21st, 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state. Yes, Dwight Eisenhower issued the proclamation admitting Hawaii into the Union as the 50th state. The islands had been an independent kingdom before the monarchy was overthrown in 1893, and it was followed by the U.S. annexing it in 1898, and for decades it was an American territory. After Hawaii's voters overwhelmingly approved it becoming a state, Congress passed the necessary legislation, and it was admitted as the 50th state. Number 17, Robert Fulton. And he started off on his historic steamboat voyage in New York City, bound for Albany. It was August 17th, 1807. And you can go back to my previous podcast episode all about this, right? Why was this so important? Because now you had a way to go upstream. He hadn't invented the first steamboat, but this vessel demonstrated that steam-powered passenger transportation would be practical and reliable, right? So it ushered in a huge transportation revolution, moving goods. Again, as I said, prior to this, you'd had to be lucky to be able to go upstream in the river. This was huge. Number 16, August 21st, 1911, the Mona Lisa is stolen. And I would argue, and a lot of people have said this, at the time, the Mona Lisa wasn't the most famous painting in the world. But once it was stolen, and the story and everything that happened after this, it no doubt became now the most famous painting. So it was stolen from the Louvre Museum in Paris. It was Leonardo da Vinci's painting. And it was stolen by this gentleman by the name of Vincenzo Peruggia. He had previously worked in the museum, and he just stayed overnight. The museum was closed, and he walked out the next day. It's an amazing story and definitely will be a future episode. He hid in a utility closet. And then the next morning, with the help of a plumber who assumed he was just another employee, he unlocked the service door for him, and out he went. The Mona Lisa. Number 15, the Panama Canal opened on August 15th, 1914. It officially opened to commercial traffic when the cargo ship SS Ancon made the passage. Before the Panama Canal existed, ships had to travel all the way around the tip of South America. It was game changer. 50-mile canal. It provided obviously a shortcut directly through Panama, the country. It was an unbelievable engineering achievement, but it came at a huge cost. Thousands of workers died during the French and American construction, and it was mostly from diseases such as malaria or yellow fever. It was really an amazing accomplishment, but like I said, tragedy at the same time. Number 14, Genghis Khan passed away on August 18th, 1227. He was the founder of the Mongol Empire, and he died during a military campaign. He had united rival Mongol tribes and built a huge, powerful military force that conquered almost most of Asia. What's interesting about his death is that it's still unknown as to how he passed away and what the circumstances were, but the location of his grave is actually another huge mystery. Bottom line, his successors continued expanding the Mongol Empire until really it became the largest land empire in history, period. That is why Genghis Khan still today, this day, is so famous. Number 13, someone else passed away. To compare him to Genghis Khan is just crazy, but in terms of the culture and the impact and the shock, in my generation, and I shouldn't say my generation, for my parents' generation, because it was when Marilyn Monroe died the night of August 4th going into the 5th, the year I was born, 1962, only 4 months after I was born. So she died in her home in Los Angeles. She was only 36. She had become one of Hollywood's biggest stars through plenty of movies, but her death was officially ruled probable suicide because it was an overdose of barbiturates, but her huge fame, her troubled life, and her early death made Marilyn Monroe, no doubt, one of the enduring cultural icons of the 20th century. And again, this is why ranking this is just kind of crazy, but I put number 12 as Hurricane Katrina. August 29th, 2005. I do remember it, just seeing it on TV, just so horrific and so horrible. The people that would be literally on top of their roofs, just waiting to be rescued and praying to be rescued. It made landfall along the Gulf Coast of the United States. Huge winds, obviously a huge storm surge and flooding, caused a lot of controversy in terms of the failure of its levees, the flood wall system. A lot of sections of New Orleans was underwater. More than 1,800 people passed away. Horrible. Number 11, Christopher Columbus begins his first voyage. When? August 3rd, 1492, right? Didn't end up finding that new world, which he didn't. He didn't know he found the new world, but, he didn't get there until October, but he started his journey on August 3rd. So he left Spain with the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and he hoped to reach Asia by sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean. Instead, his expedition, yes, we know, reached the islands of the Caribbean in October. And hey, of course, the world would never be the same. Number 10, India becomes independent from Britain on August 15th, 1947. It ended 2 centuries of expanding British rule and almost 90 years of direct control and rule by Britain. The independence movement in India was decades in the making, and it was really political activism, resistance, and nonviolent protest that was spearheaded by Mahatma Gandhi. Not only did it create the country of India, but also with Pakistan at the same time. It was August 15th of 1947 when all this began. Number 9, Pompeii was destroyed. They say, although it's not definitively understood, but they say it was August 24th, 79 AD. What happened? Mount Vesuvius violently erupted, the volcano, and it released a huge catastrophic cloud of ash, rock, and toxic gases right into the sky. All of the debris completely buried the Roman city of Pompeii. And what is so horrible, but so amazing. It was preserved for centuries under all this layer of ash. And yes, we were able to find it. It was officially rediscovered, and the excavation started in 1748, all those years later. Number 8, Washington, D.C. burns to the ground, August 24th, 1814. I did a whole podcast episode on this horrible day during the War of 1812. British troops entered the city. They pushed back American forces, and they set fire to a lot of government buildings, the Capitol, and yes, the White House. President James Madison had already fled the city, and his wife, Dolly Madison, left only after making sure that she got that famous portrait of George Washington out of the White House. Certainly, this was a defining moment in our history and a huge low moment in the War of 1812. No doubt. Number 7, how about Woodstock? Yes, I was 7 years old, didn't know it. It was happening not far from my house, really only an hour and change from my house, north of where I grew up in Poughkeepsie, New York. But August 15th to the 18th, 1969, hundreds of thousands, not just thousands, hundreds of thousands of young people went to this dairy farm near Bethel, New York. Actually, it was called Woodstock, but Woodstock is actually not where it was located, right? It was billed as 3 days of peace and music. The festival stretched into the morning of August 18th. Performers were Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, The Who, Santana, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. And it was rain, there was mud, there was traffic jams, and you talk about one event being the symbol of the entire 1960s, a defining cultural moment where there were protests with the Vietnam War, everything that happened in the 1960s with young people. Woodstock is no doubt that defining moment. Number 6, and this one I remember exactly where I was. I was at Marist College at this cross-country camp. I came out into the hallway outside my room where I was staying in the dorm, Champagne dorm at Marist College campus, and someone came out and said Elvis Presley died. And I just couldn't believe it. Talk about, again, a cultural icon from the 50s. And here we were. It was August 16th, 1977. I was just going to be a sophomore in high school, just prior to school starting. And he was found unresponsive at his home in Graceland in Memphis, Tennessee. And just, really, he was only 42 years old. And again, talk about rock and roll and who started it and who is the biggest star. Elvis Presley, still just as famous today as he was back then. Number 5, and here we go with the top 5. I'm not going to rank them. It's not appropriate to rank them, in my opinion, because how can you say that one event is more memorable when it's a horrible event? Certainly moments that are memorable, moments that define history, good or bad. When you think of August, what do you think of? Well, one of them was Richard Nixon resigning. It was the evening of August 8th, 1974. I was 12 years old, and yes, I remember sitting there in my basement with my family watching him on TV. It started with the break-in at the Watergate complex 2 years prior in June of 1972. Bottom line was that Richard Nixon covered up this crime. He said all along that he wasn't involved here, but what ended up happening was the Congress were going to impeach him. So instead of being removed from office, he chose to resign instead. One of the worst moments in the history of our country, certainly when it comes to one of our presidents. Number 4, more positive events. August 28th, 1963, it was Martin Luther King and the March on Washington. 250,000 people gathered in D.C. for what reason? Jobs and freedom. Demonstrators marched for civil rights, voting rights, economic opportunity, and the end to racial discrimination. Standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, Dr. Martin Luther King delivered the speech that became the defining address of his life, the defining address, you can argue, of all time. The speech is so iconic and so memorable. I have a dream. It became one of the defining events of the civil rights movement and helped build momentum for the federal civil rights legislation that was ultimately passed a few years later. Okay, the last 3. Just horrible, 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 horrible. And this is why war, you never want it. August 6th, 1945, the atomic bomb is dropped on Hiroshima, Japan. August 9th, 1945, the atomic bomb is dropped on Nagasaki, Japan. And then the 3rd, August 15th, 1945, Japan announced its surrender, ending World War II. And you know what? Maybe it's fitting that these 3 are linked forever together. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, the end of World War II. They remind us both of the terrible human cost of war and of the hope really that comes when peace finally returns. Peace, not war. Friends, thanks for taking this journey with me, learning all about the 20 most memorable moments in August. Reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. We are on Facebook. We are on X. We are on YouTube. We are on Spotify. Love it when you subscribe to the podcast. Follow the podcast. The rating, the reviews, always appreciated. Until next time, have fun and keep learning.